Hey, what is up everybody? ArmchairTuna back again with another video, and in today's video, I actually have gotten some important news exclusively from IGN. Apparently, they've actually played Grounded 2 a little bit early and have released some new info on Grounded 2 about some gameplay features, a little bit of the story, I believe, and some other things. So I'm going to take a dive into this and talk about what they do in this article. So this first part, it pretty much just talks about, yeah, it's the predecessor for Grounded, that it's going to release early access next month. But pretty much down here is where things get a little bit kind of weird, not weird, but pretty interesting. So much of what I thought tutorial was pleasantly more grounded. It's the same kids, albeit 2 years later now, shrunk down to ant size thanks to the shady dealings of a company called Ominent. Once shrunk, they suffer from a touch of amnesia, which leaves them from little memory of what they were doing pre-shrinking. But luckily, our teens do remember the gist of their little tiny backyard adventure, even if they must reacquire many of the skills they developed the first time around. Crafting, for instance, you will be analyzing every tool you come across. So analyzing is going to be back. That is one thing I was wondering about, if the field stations were going to be back, which luckily they are. Once again, learning new recipes, slowly building new pieces of armor, weapons, tools, and other items to help survive. And yeah, it just concludes with saying that's what the original was. However, so with this one, before I actually get to the next one, they actually do talk about a tutorial. So there is going to be a bit of a tutorial in the first part of Grounded 2. In the first part of Grounded, all it was it dropped you into the kid's case, and it didn't really tell you what to do at all. It was just kind of like, oh, go here to this research station, go over here to the mysterious machine and figure it out yourself. So I guess there's actually a tutorial now for Grounded 2, which is really cool. And here's another thing that's really cool about this. So what's new here is obviously short early game simple, but I did get a taste of some of it. You'll get a new Omni tool, for instance, that combines all of your tools into one for easy use without taking up inventory space. I didn't get to experience with its major use much, but I did use it to hack away some of the enormous grass blades in place of an axe. And I'm assuming what they're talking about is going to be kind of like the Ominent hammer they were using in the Frozen part of, I think, the reveal, like the gameplay trailer for Grounded. And another mechanic is the addition of a dodge button in combat, which fit in so smoothly. I briefly forgot dodging was a part of the first game. Both of these examples are relatively small quality of life features, but they seem poised to smooth out some of the wrinkles in the overall experience long term. It's wild that the first Grounded didn't have a dodge button before now. So they don't really talk about much here. Well, this for the second part anyways. They just talk about how the dodge mechanics fleshly rolled out. It just kind of fits in perfectly with the game, which is really good to hear, because I was kind of wondering how the dodge mechanic would be like in Grounded 2. So IGN to say, oh yeah, the dodge mechanic is pretty good. That's good to hear, my eyes or ears. Whoops. Right here, they actually do talk about the buggies here. So I was able to ride proudly astride with a big ol' ant. It kind of ruled. It's fun to ride a big bug galloping around my ant steed aside. The buggy actually came with quite a few other interesting features packed in. So you can sprint or swap to a much slower gathering mode that you will have your buggy collect any resources it runs into as you pass them. That's going to be so good for farming resources, because this map is huge and getting all the resources would probably take so much time, and also away from exploring the map and also doing some of the other things in Grounded 2. And that's just a really good feature they have for the buggy. It just eliminates the time for harvesting, grinding, like I just talked about. And also, like we saw in the trailers, the buggy can also fight on your behalf or chop down on blades of grass, once again, to help you farm or build, I should say. I scared it through a nest of mites. So also another thing that, okay, so mites are returning. So that's another insect that is returning, because in the trailers, there was no mites to be seen. So that is another insect that is returning from the first Grounded. Gripping a glowing mushroom torch and letting my aunt do all the dirty work. So that's a new torch they're adding to the game. A glowing mushroom torch was just kind of interesting. The dirty work of munching away every mite that threw itself at me. I was told in an interview at our previous session that these buggy mounts essentially necessary in Grounded 2, alongside other factors. The first Grounded was never designed for the speed, which is true. As a result, the map is too small for Obsidian to implement buggies as real useful features for anyone. The only way to get off-requested rideable bugs into the game is make the game much, much bigger. I'll admit, buggies weren't really needed in Grounded, especially after the New Game Plus update, where at New Game Plus 2, you would get the teleporters, and it just completely made the zip lines niche. What is going to be kind of weird is, for example, the Omni tool. So I wonder how this is going to be for the entire balance of Grounded 2. Because if you have an Omni tool that early into the game, will it be like necessary to get any of the axes and stuff like that, unless they're not intending to bring like the tools from the first Grounded, like the axes and hammers, and more intending them to be weapons that you can use and not tools? Because if so, that would be pretty cool to have an Omni tool, but also for the balancing the game, I'm not really sure. Also, the fact that your mounts can actually collect resources is amazing. I love that so much. All right, everyone. So we are at the last article for today's video, and I am going to zoom this in quite a bit because there are so many ads here. But so for the first part, they never really jumped onto the Grounded bandwagon. And I was under the impression that it was a kid's game, but after the first turd came out of Hoops' mouth in Grounded 2, I knew I was sorely mistaken. So I guess the kids now, or the teens I should say, have got quite a bit of extended vocabulary than the first game, which does make sense because obviously they have matured and it takes place 2 years after the first game. But this next one actually talks about the tutorial. So I took the tutorial route since I wasn't familiar with the gameplay yet. We had 4 characters to choose from: Max, Willow, Pete, or Hoops. After making the obvious choice, I grabbed Hoops and we started our adventure. Hoops wakes up for having been shrunk again, not knowing what's going on, and the tutorial plays out like an employee training session for the company Ominent. And after an event I won't spoil, you are off to a mission in the massive new area of Brook Hollow Park. So either this is talking about, in the tutorial, you are like an Ominent scientist, and it's pretty much like guiding you through it. And after the explosion, maybe you get sent to Brook Hollow Park, or it's just some sort of tutorial as the start of the game where you've been shrunk at. I'm not really sure. I don't know. But anyways, I was pleasantly surprised by the visual fidelity of Grounded 2. The world is lush, bright, filled with things to harvest and collect, which is a crafter and hoarder's dream. I was given a quick crafting tutorial, learning to build some basic tools, bandages, work tables, etc. As I explored the area, I came across tree roots, grass, dried grass, clovers, sap, rocks, and more. The world is also littered with big people stuff like trash strewn around the park. And yeah, it just talks around some of the locations you can find and some of the trash left in the park after the initial explosion happened. And moving around it right here, it just kind of talks about the buggies and the buggy systems, being able to smash walls and harvest materials. And it even says it'll take some time to build up your new mount between researching different materials and gathering them. Moving around on my new friend was fast and fluid. I think buggies will add something special to Grounded 2, which also, I just skipped this. I was spoiled with a magic button to spawn an ant mount. So I guess maybe you could, there might be a button that you could press to actually call your mount to where you are, which is really cool. But he went on to explain that not only have in-game characters changed, but so has the player base, which is true. I'm not going to lie, this perfectly explains me. I was like 12 when the first Grounded came out, so even says right here, if you're 12 when you played Grounded, you're 17 now, so your tastes are different, which is very, very true. the vibe you want is different. So the big piece is, I think, aging it up, stepping up the dimensions of things, and adding a bit more of a darker tint to it. So this is actually really true, because in the gameplay reveal trailer, they actually did show the teens surrounding what looks to be like an Ominent skeleton or an Ominent body of a scientist, which is definitely a lot darker than the first game. Because in the first game, the closest thing you got to a body were obviously just the skeletons. So who knows? They might do actual corpses in the game. I doubt it if they want to keep the teen rating. Right here, if you think you're heading into Honey, I Shrunk the Kids of Ground 2, you're in a surprise. You're fighting adorable bugs, sure, but you're searching bodies and fighting for survival. So this just only confirms that they're definitely going for the more mature route. For instead of skeletons, they're adding bodies to the game, which that's going to be interesting to see. And Obsidian have absolutely mastered the charm that they were hoping for. I'm looking of seeing more to the story and figuring out how dark it goes. And right here, they do explain that they'd had some difficulties during combat, to where their spear was very inconsistent of where they were aiming at. So maybe this is an early bit of a little bit of nerfing of hucking weapons, because if you do remember in the first Grounded, if you mastered hucking weapons early game, it was a absolute game changer. You could destroy tier 2 enemies with that if you were skilled enough. So maybe they're like nerfing the accuracy of hucking weapons. I found map markers equally difficult to understand, which could be a build problem. Several looked the same. I couldn't identify which marker corresponded to which quest. So it does look like, I'm assuming that Burgle quests or some form of Burgle quests are going to be in the game from that alone. And also, who knows, maybe some side missions for the main story. That would be pretty cool. I would love to see side missions. And with that, that is pretty much all for today's video. If y'all enjoyed, please make sure to like and subscribe, as it will help out a ton. And I will see you all later. Peace.